Whenever I can, I like to go exploring by myself, especially when I'm climbing. My friends don't move around much, and when they do join me, they move more slowly, which slows me down. One Saturday afternoon around 2 p.m., I chose to go on a hike by myself. Many times before, but only early in the morning when it's cool and the path is quiet, I had hiked this trail. I thought I'd be done with the trail around sunset because it was so long. It's about 9 miles round trip to walk the trail. A steady climb goes up on the way back, which makes it a bit difficult. The first part of the road goes through a thick forest. The trees make the path cool and shady. The second part of the walk goes along a wide mountainside with more direct sunlight and wide views. The thick forest trees hid most of the light, even when the sun was high in the sky. As I started to walk, I came across some hikers who were going back. Being one of the last people on the road, seeing them made me feel good. As the sun went down, the thought of being out there by myself made me walk faster to make sure I'd finish before it got dark. As I walked, the trail moved quickly, and everything went as planned. When I got to the end, I stopped for 5 minutes and then began walking back. After going about halfway back, it was 4 p.m. The trail was empty. I hadn't seen anyone else yet because I had already passed some people who had turned around. That meant I was by myself on the way back. It was getting darker in the bush as the sun went down behind the mountains. The shadows got longer, and the trees seemed to get closer to me as I climbed the steep part of the trail. I put on some music to take my mind off the rising darkness because I didn't like being alone. As I walked, I saw a dark shape cross the path. It looked like it was about the size of a rabbit or rat. Any animal I knew wasn't there because it was moving too fast and wasn't a clear color or shape. It was just a dark mist. I got scared and started running. It kept getting darker and darker as the light went out. While I was running, I had a strong sense that someone or something was following me. The path back had been empty the whole way, so I knew no one was behind me. I always carry a small knife with me in case I need it for safety, so I took it out to be ready. I stopped running in the middle of the forest because I was getting tired, so I sped up to a fast walk. As I slowed down, I had a strong desire to look back, so I did a few times. I ran quickly for about a quarter mile and was almost at the entrance. I turned around and saw a dark form that looked like a person following me about 30 feet behind me. The dark figure's head and upper body were clear, but below the hips it was just a dark blur. As soon as I saw it, the figure ran quickly into the trees. I ran as fast as I could to the entrance because I was so scared. Luckily, I was closer than I thought. Seeing the sun and my car again made me feel so much better. I was running so fast to get to my car that I missed the people who were still in the parking lot, getting ready to leave. I didn't notice them until I was in my car, safe but shaking and trying to cool down. Before getting in my car, I took a moment to calm down. I took deep breaths and tried to relax. Since then, I haven't gone camping. 2 months have passed. I looked into the path and learned that it was used in the late 1800s to get from one gold mining town to another. It was forgotten for almost 100 years until it was reopened in the 1980s for recreation and to get to a swimming hole. The house where I lived with my guy roommate was a small duplex less than a block from the college. Every day and night, our street was full of cars and people walking to and from school. Even though the town is small, the area where we live and where the college is located is often thought of as the worst part of town, most likely because it's older and the homes aren't as fancy. There were a few homeless people around, but I knew most of them from when I worked at a fast food restaurant. They were the kind of people that others in town thought were sketchy. In the 6 years I lived there, I had never felt unsafe. If I didn't have a car, I would walk to work and school every day. I get very nervous when I drive. That was about 9 or 10 months ago. I was watching TV in my living room at 10 p.m. My roommate, who usually plays computer games in his room in the evenings, was there. I had placed an order for pizza earlier for dinner, but when it got here, some of it was missing. When I called the pizza place to ask about the missing items, they said they were sorry and that someone would bring the rest of my order soon. There was a loud knock on my door while I was sitting in the living room. It scared me, but I thought it was the pizza delivery person. so I answered the door. Additionally, I should mention that there was no peephole, and I couldn't see anyone outside through the living room window, so I had to open the door. On my stoop, there was a middle-aged man I didn't know. He wore a big, puffy jacket, a black hat, and big, heavy boots. Since it was dark, I couldn't make out his face. I was shocked and confused. I said, "Hello?" He moved back a little and asked, "Hey, is your husband home?" For some reason, I didn't give my answer much thought, so I said, "No." He then mumbled something which made me want to leave. I told him to wait, locked the door, and went to get my roommate. My roommate went outside to see what was going on after I explained, but the man was no longer there. He must have either run away quickly or left in a car because it had been less than 5 minutes since I locked the door and got my roommate. My roommate hadn't seen him at all, so I felt a little crazy. He told me not to answer the door late at night unless I knew who it was. After what happened, I was really upset. I cried and called my boyfriend to tell him about it. He checked on me to make sure everything was okay. Even though everything was fine again, I was still very careful at night because I didn't want that to happen again. Now we're in the middle of February, around 8 o'clock. I was watching TV in my living room when loud knocks came on my door. I think I was waiting for food delivery again, but I'm not sure. I was scared again, but I went to answer the door anyway. Dressed the same as before, I was pretty sure it was the same man when I opened it. When he asked if my husband was home, I slammed the door in his face right away. I locked it and went to get my roommate. The man was gone when my roommate went outside. At this point, I was scared to death. The first time, it just seemed like a coincidence. There was a strange person at my door. But I was really scared when it happened again. My roommate and I talked about calling the cops, and in the end, I chose to do it. A police officer came to my house after I called the non-emergency line and told them what happened. They asked what the man looked like and said they would look for him. I didn't notice anything specific about the man, like if he had something hidden in his hand or if there was another car close, but the officer still asked. I told my neighbor about it by putting a note in her mailbox. I knew there was a girl my age living there, and I wanted to make sure she was safe. Before I moved out, nothing like that happened again. But it scared me a lot and still does. I'm very careful now every time I leave the house, even during the day. I just got home from delivering pizza in a small town in North Carolina, and what I saw tonight is still making my heart race. I just started the job a few days ago, and this is my first night shift. I hope it's the last one. I had just finished delivering an order, and it was a little after 9. Something strange caught my eye as I rode my bike back to the store. From far away, I saw someone or something on a bike coming toward me. The only light on the street was from the headlight on my scooter. It looked like a person for the most part, but it was wearing a simple paper Halloween mask that you can get at any shop. There was a wavy line on the mask that went from the top left to the bottom right and split the color in half. It was orange on one side and purple on the other. Its face was hidden by the mask. I couldn't even see its eyes. I couldn't see much else because it was so dark. Its clothes were all black, so they blended in with the night. I tried to pay attention, but it felt creepier as I looked more. There was something wrong with it. There was something sticking out of the top of the mask. It might have been hair, but I didn't think so. The hair was at least a foot long and moved around. It's like a strange plant. That's the best way I can explain it. There were what looked like tangled branches and vines coming out of the thing's head, making it look like it was living. It was doing a wheelie too, riding down the street toward me with the front wheel of the bike raised high. It stayed balanced the whole time, like it was second nature, which made it even creepier. The way this thing made me feel was what made me realize it wasn't human. I couldn't take my eyes off it for a second. It caught my attention. I felt like I was drawn to it, and the more I looked at it, the more scared I got. When I was about to turn, I saw it coming toward me. The thing was gone as soon as I ended the turn, which made it hard for me to focus on where I was going. When I looked back down the street I had just come from, it was gone. I was still very scared and breathing hard. I had to go back to the store, though. Before I got to my shop, I took a small left turn onto the long avenue. There it was again, riding toward me while doing a wheelie. Before it moved around me and ended up on my left as I walked to the store, it was on my right. My scooter wouldn't move faster no matter how hard I pushed it. It stayed right next to me. Then, out of the blue, it jumped off the bike and onto the sidewalk. It landed easily and grabbed the bike without any trouble. Even though I was scared, I took a deep breath and went into the store, trying to stay alert. There were no people in the store, but all of my coworkers were there and seemed fine. For a short time, I rubbed my face against a fan to calm down, and then I grabbed my next delivery. The bike was gone when I went outside, even though I hadn't seen anyone move it. When my shift was over at 10 o'clock, I never saw the strange thing again. I was very suspicious on the way home. I was afraid it would be waiting for me in the road at every turn. It kept coming back to me. When I saw it standing on a bridge, it took my attention away from the road and I almost hit a creek. I hope I'm safe now that I'm home, but I'm still very worried. It's the first time in 20 years that I've seen anything like this. It happened in the south of the UK about 10 years ago. When I was about 18, I worked part-time at a gas station on a road that connected a small, quiet town to a bigger route that led to a nearby city. Now I'm 28 years old. The town was very nice, but only wealthy people could afford to live there. It was mostly residential, with big houses, nice lawns, and pricey cars. The fact that Waitrose was the only big store in the area shows how high class it was. Other than that, the town only had small shops or fancy grocery stores that were privately owned. I've always liked cars, so it was fun to see the different high-end sports cars parked outside every day. This is where I met Michael. He dressed well and was in his late 40s, always wearing Gant or Ralph Lauren clothes and sharp canali suits for work. He was a great person. There were not many people in the area who were consistently nice. Most people were rude to those who weren't as wealthy. Michael stood out since he didn't act that way. We talked about his collection of cars and the expensive watches he wore all the time. Michael always showed up in a Rolex and one of his Aston Martins, Range Rovers, or Porsches. We could always talk about something. I learned that he worked in finance, and we talked about my future plans since I liked the sound of his job. We stayed in touch, talking on the phone until I quit that part-time job to become an apprentice at my uncle's agency. Let me talk about my uncle now. He has a lot of different things going on. Besides his real estate and trading business, he also owned a few takeout places to make extra money. I would sometimes drive deliveries for him when one of his drivers didn't show up. I didn't mind the extra work. Luckily, my uncle lived in the village I mentioned before, and the main pizza place he owned was well liked by the people. Since this was the case, tips were usually very big, and my uncle often gave me extra money for helping out. In the summer of 2008, I was asked to bring some pizzas to a house on a very nice street. People with a lot of fame liked living in this area because of its fancy houses. A lot of these homes cost more than $1.4 million, and I was interested in seeing how they looked up close. Each one had a gate and was set back from the road, making it hard to see. I arrived and pressed the call button. A faint voice answered, "Yes?" When I replied with the name of the takeout, the gates slowly opened. I went up the long path to a huge fake Georgian house with a separate garage for 4 cars. Then I saw Michael's license plate on one of the cars. Number plates on his cars had his letters and the numbers 1, 2, and 3, a style also used on his wife's cars. Like many young people who want to work in business, I was very interested in how this guy lived. While I was taking the pizzas out of my car, the double doors opened and a face I didn't know looked back at me. A skinny guy with a shaved head, he looked to be in his early 20s. Without a shirt on, he wore old, worn-out jeans and shoes. Along with that, he had something behind his back that I couldn't see. His voice was hoarse and hard to hear when he talked, and I had never heard that accent before. I was told to bring the pizzas to the kitchen. The house was very quiet inside, and the decorations were just as nice as they were outside. I didn't say anything because I was nervous. I just looked at him, which made him more angry. He said it again, this time sounding more irritated. Bring the pizza through. I finally spoke up and asked, "Where is Michael? Isn't this Michael's place?" I was feeling very uncomfortable around this guy. I wanted to leave that place with all my heart. Then I realized I was stuck inside because the land had a gate. As worry took over, my heart started beating fast, and I felt a wave of fear. I ran down the driveway and climbed over the gates to give myself a better chance of getting away. I then left my car and dropped the pizza on the dirt. They were made of wood and didn't have any sharp points on top of them. Behind me, I could always hear his boots crunching on the dirt. As I climbed over the gates, I didn't look back. My fall on the pavement below was heavy. The excitement made my heart beat fast, and I ran quickly for what seemed like hours but was probably only 10 minutes. I went to a nearby park and called the cops when I felt safe enough to do so. While one officer drove to the property with another police car to look into it, the first officer stayed with me to keep me calm and take my statement. At first, I thought the cops didn't believe me, or thought I was up to something. But when my uncle picked me up and told the officer I was there to deliver pizza, he began to believe me. They didn't find anyone on the land when they arrived, but they did find my car, even though the tires were slashed and the windows were broken. I learned later that Michael and his family were in Australia at the time visiting family. I never worked at the pizza place again. It's not always true that wealth or financial security is reassuring. Some people will always find ways to act out their crazy habits.